So in this video, I'm going to be talking about this TMP750 teleprompter from Glide Gear. I'm going to tell you what I like about it and what is less than perfect. But the gist of it is I love how solid it is, how flexible it is, and how big it is. Let's get into the details. Pretty simple teleprompter. It's a piece of glass that has the camera behind. You provide the camera. It has a monitor or an iPad or something like that in front. You provide the iPad. So this actually is really wide in terms of how flexible it is. It says you can fit like an 11.5 or a 12-inch wide monitor on this, but that's only if you want to see 100% of the monitor in the mirror. This is a 15-inch monitor that I have here, and it cuts off just the corners, the bottom corners. So using it as a teleprompter or using it with Zoom, things like that, no problem. You can cut off those corners, and because the glass is so tall, you can fit a really large image on here. And on the flip side, if you want to use a really small monitor like an iPhone, you can do that too, because they've provided a couple of extra pieces. This one here you can mount on the front and make your iPhone sit further away so that you can have it in the middle of the monitor, in the middle of the glass. They also have a couple of these guys, and you can use these on the front, on the back, wherever you want to use them. But they have, I think it's, it looks like 2 1/4-inch, 1/4-20 screws and maybe some 3/8-inch screw holes so that you can mount different things. And I actually used this in one example. I also like to put this on the back, just having one extra on the back behind the camera on the 15mm rails, tightened down really tight, because I have left it loose in the past on a different teleprompter, left my camera loose, and the tripod head was not tightened, and it flipped like this, and the camera slipped right off the back. So I always now want to hook something up to the back to make sure that nothing slides off. You can do that on the front too, because they give you 2 of them. You also have different choices in size. So they give you these couple of extra, looks like they're maybe, 10-inch long, 15mm rails that you can screw into the rails that are on there. So if you have a bigger camera, say you've got a really professional grade, one of those big video cameras, you can fit that too. Lots of flexibility with this teleprompter. It has a very sturdy place to mount your camera. If you're using one of those bigger cameras that are very expensive, you're going to want that flexibility or that sturdiness there. It was a little bit confusing to put this together, but it's actually very simple once you know what you're doing. And it does have some flexibility in terms of the height. So if you have a DSLR or if you have a base on the DSLR, like a battery base, or if you've got like a C300 or something that has a really a big base below the lens, you can move it down or up depending on what you want to do with it. Now, one thing I found is that I wish this was taller. I wish it could go taller. I wish the flexibility was more on this, because if you're using a webcam or something with a pretty wide angle view, you need to get the camera you need to get the camera up and pretty far forward to be able to use this teleprompter. And if you're using an iPhone or you're using a webcam or something like that, it is a little tricky. I'll tell you how I solved that before the end of this video, but just note that it's hard to get the camera up high enough if you want it in the middle of the screen with the screen at a 45-degree angle. So I've got a DSLR in here, and if I'm really far away, I was able to read the teleprompter at 25 feet away. And if you want to have a long lens in there where it's got a really tight telephoto cropping, you can tilt the monitor or tilt the glass down at a steeper angle, and the camera will be in about the middle of the screen, even with it being at kind of a low setting. But if you want to be close to it and you tilt the camera, or you tilt the glass up and you put the camera in, you need to tilt the glass up if you want to use a wider lens. Otherwise, you're going to be seeing the top of the mirror. So if you tilt that glass up, you're not able to get the camera into the middle, which is a little bit frustrating unless you have a taller camera. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Like all good things Glide Gear, they do provide a case, and this is a hard plastic case. It's not as hard as some of the really professional level cases, but yeah, inside a bunch of foam to be able to store this away if you want to move it around. So the plate where it attaches to the tripod has a 1/4-20, and I think it's a 3/8-inch hole in it, so you can mount different sizes there. However, one thing I saw online in terms of the reviews is the plate where you mount your camera only has a quarter 20 and it's not interchangeable. You can't pull it out and put something else in, and it doesn't have the little pin to hold your video camera steady. Also, the length of this quarter 20 screw is a little bit short, so sometimes it's a little bit hard to fit, to get it tied into your camera and tightened up. But it also allows you to get a little bit further forward if you want to push your camera closer to the glass. If you need to get to the front of your lens, there is a zipper and then Velcro here, so you can get to the front and modify anything, zip it up, Velcro it back down. And it's nice because it is not resting on your lens. Some of these teleprompters, they have the fabric resting on your lens. This is a really, kind of like a cardboardy underneath there or something. And then the back side has a fabric that you can tighten around the lens, or you can tighten around the back of your camera. And all of that keeps it nice and dark behind the mirror, which is important. Now, as I mentioned, I use this with a webcam usually, or with my iPhone. So because because that back doesn't get really tall, I've actually decided to use something like this magic arm here. So you can see this gives me an extra 9 or 10 inches. It allows me to move it up higher and also closer to the screen, because webcams tend to have very wide angles. So if it was sitting back further, first off, the text would be scrolling above the webcam, or if you're using it on Zoom, the person's eyes would be way above the webcam. This allows me to move the webcam very close to the middle of the screen and get close enough so that it's not seeing the edge. I'm able to do the same thing with an iPhone by putting a clip here. So I did get a magic arm that came with a couple of extra pieces here. So this actually allows me to mount this to the top of the camera plate that's in there, the existing one that's a little bit taller. Before that, my plan was to use this to mount the magic arm directly to the 15mm rails, but by mounting it onto that plate, I'm able to get a few extra inches and get this really close to the top of the mirror. So I've got some more videos about how I use this as a teleprompter with my computer and also with Zoom, so that when I have Zoom calls, I can be looking the person in the eye. And what's great about this one is it's so big that it really seems like you're talking face to face with someone, because you can get their image so large on the mirror. So check those videos out too.